Hey guys, subscribe for daily content. And if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got 5 more extremely cool knives to share with you guys. Seriously, there's actually a bunch of really cool knives today that have elements that we don't normally see in the knife world, so I'll be happy to share that with you guys. Thanks so much to my patrons for supporting me, and please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. Most of these knives, I bumped the camera, sorry. Most of these knives are available. Not all of them, but most of them. I'll link them right down below in the description. It does help my channel when you use those links, but that's entirely up to you. Okay, let's start out here with the new Remt Parag Falcon, which literally is something that I unboxed like 2 or 3 days ago. You guys haven't seen it yet. This is interesting because the pivot is acting as the disengagement for the lock. The lock itself is actually a liner lock, you can see there, but the pivot is what moves it out of the way, which is fun. It's technically something we've seen before because it is a pivot actuated lock, but you get that clicky, heavy detent feel, right? You can front flip it, it's fine. You can also reverse flick it, but you really have to be in exactly the right spot. But once you find it, you can find it over and over and over again. I do like that it's a liner lock and not a plunge lock because I trust liner locks a little bit more than regular, plunge locks. It also comes in a few different configurations. You're gonna get this cool blade shape either way. I was wiping the spit off of the blade there. Sorry about that, but I figure I might as well call it out. I know what I did. You can get this sort of brownish, grayish ano with the gold if you want, but they also have some of that lightning ano. They have a full body lightning ano. You do get that cool, super glass blasted blade in contrast with the bead blasting up here on the flat that does look a lot like the SOCOM Bravo without being the SOCOM Bravo. I actually like it. And by the way, the action is very good. I've yet to decide if this little slot up here is actually meant for tritium, but you're welcome to try it, obviously, if it's yours. These come in at about $235, but I believe I've got a discount code directly from Remt in the description. You guys can use it to get $40 off. Depends on when you're watching. If you're watching this on the date it came out, it probably works, right? But they did give me a discount code, so you can check that out if you want to. I honestly think it's really cool. I wish that it had a sliding safety because where you grip it when you're choked up does risk disengagement. Not so much in the right hand, but if you are left-handed, I mean, it's not going to matter much. It doesn't have a left-handed mounting position for the pocket clip. But if you are left-handed and you're choking up on this thing, right? I know a lot of you lefties just deal with it and you carry it in your right-hand side pocket. If you push down hard enough, the pad of your index finger will actually disengage the knife. Otherwise, everything works very, very well. I'm very impressed with it. I think we're entering the age of the pivot-actuated button lock, and this isn't a bad way to start it. Honestly, for the price tag, I think it's pretty good, considering you're getting M390 in titanium. I forgot to mention that. That's a lot of M390 in titanium and a lot of polishing too. Looks really, really good. Moving on here, one that's not quite available, but one that you will definitely want to be paying attention to and looking out for, and that's the Ved Anleo. Ankylo? Something like that. Ankylo is how we spell it. This is not yet available. It is yet another lock that is actuated via the pivot, but this does not operate the same way as the previous knife. No, actually, the lock itself is engaged within the pivot, making it an entirely different system. And I'm going to be honest with you, it feels a lot more solid than either a liner lock or a plunge lock. Whatever it is that they're doing, it is... in fact, I actually showed it in the unboxing. I took it entirely apart. There's this huge lever that like sets down into the pivot. There's a lot of material in there. It seems like a super strong locking system. Now, I haven't taken this out and done any destruction testing with it, but just by looking at it when I did the unboxing, which again, you guys will see, it looks like there's a lot involved, and it's also something that's completely unique. I've not actually seen a locking system exactly like this. On top of that, it takes a lot more effort to disengage the lock. You can see here in my right-handed, grip, where my index finger naturally falls is not on top of that button. Even if you are left-handed, which again doesn't matter in this case because there's no mounting position for lefties. Sorry, lefties, I'm looking out for you. I can't. Not everything that's out there is left-handed. I'm sorry. If you are left-handed and you're squeezing this thing, the button does take a little bit more travel, but it is still possible to disengage it, as you just heard right there. So just be aware of that. Right-handed people, you should be okay. Pushing the button absolutely drops it. This thing has gigantic washers, and I just realized I can actually show you the systems that are in place locking this thing out. So the lock itself, or what's setting into the pivot, looks like this. This little lever sort of presses into the pivot up here. So there's quite a bit of material holding this out. And then this is all actually screwed to the frame. You might actually be able to see in there where that piece is sitting. And then these bearing washers are enormous, right? But there's a lot of little ceramic balls there on either side. Don't normally see washers that size. They sent me some extra parts so I could showcase it. But really cool, and plenty of room to get your finger in there to do the reverse flick. It's also got a rear sort of low profile flipper tab and a front flipper. Now, if you don't like green and gold and black, that's fine. I imagine that they'll come out with a bunch of different options. The only minor letdown is the fact that we have just a very basic pocket clip. It's still okay. For some reason, they needed this screw back here, another standoff. Vosteed, you don't need this. You have a lanyard barrel that's also acting as a standoff, and you do not have one right here. That's interesting. It's probably because of where the blade lands. But you probably could put a standoff here and get rid of this one. In any case, it's really not that bad. The carry depth is still very low, or medium, where I'd put it. But yeah, this is a really interesting knife, and it's cool that Vosteed is kind of experimenting and doing their own weird stuff. At least as far as I know, I've never seen a locking pivot lever like this before, so I think that's pretty neat. Something to keep your eyes out for, and definitely check out Vosteed's Instagram so that you can keep up on when that one actually releases. I have no idea what it'll cost. My guess is $200 to $250. Moving on here, we have another knife from Remt. You guys actually saw me unbox this the other day. And by the way, I don't know if the discount code will work for this one too. You're welcome to try it. It'll be linked down in the description. This is the RT Kingfisher. And what I like about this knife is, number one, it is a standard titanium frame lock, so lots of familiarity there. And these golden tetrahedrons, or whatever you want to call them, are used to deploy the blade. I also like that the vast majority of the frame lock is tucked underneath the frame, so you don't have to worry too much about where your fingers are. You're not having to put, or you're not forced into putting unnecessary pressure on that lock bar while you're deploying it. It's got a unique look, blah, blah, blah. But the coolest feature, honestly, is the fact that the backspacer itself actually comes off, and you can use it as the disassembly tool. It is literally a 1 to 2 step disassembly, and everything is held together very well. It's also very unlikely that the backspacer will come off on its own because of how it snaps into place. There are no springs or anything like that. It is similar to Hinder's Project X, only in the sense that the backspacer itself is the tool for disassembly, but there's no spring. So it's tension holding this in. It takes quite a bit of deliberate effort to actually pull that off there. You see there, I'm actually having trouble getting it back off. Don't do this in the closed position. I'm using mine as an example here because the tip of that tool will actually run itself into the cutting edge. You want to make sure that the blade is actually out a little bit. You can, as another commenter pointed out, before you disassemble it, just put some tape over the cutting edge so you don't accidentally cut yourself, right? Yeah, I actually think this is really neat. And the price on it, again, this is M390 in titanium, so it's still a premium knife. I do like the look of it too. It's kind of, I mean this in a nice way, it kind of looks like something that the Power Rangers from the 90s might carry, like the Gold Ranger specifically. And I kind of like that. It's kind of neat, right? This guy comes in at $229. I don't think that's bad, especially if the discount code works. So make sure and check that one out. Moving on here, we have one that is, it's an idea that I have not seen yet, but it's kind of funny that I haven't seen it yet because it seems so obvious. This is the Real Steel Evolution, and this is what I would call, I would call this a heavy duty knife, right? Not like, you're going to use it to scale the side of a building or remove a bomb shelter from its foundation, right? Save that for the imaginary cold steel scenarios. Okay, calm down. Titanium and S35 VN. You can see here, this is a Carson design, and I believe I saw some people online talking about this being a revival of a model that has existed before. I didn't know that. If you're like me and you didn't know that, well, here you go. This, as far as I know, actually runs on washers, which is cool because washers keep debris out of the pivot. Lots of people think that once you get into a certain price point, everything should be bearings because bearings are luxury and blah. I'll remind you that you can get bearings on a knife that costs less than $30 these days, so that's nonsense. It's never been true. I don't know where that rumor started. Washers, nylon washers, bearings, it all depends on who's making it and what the purpose of the knife is. In this case, the washers serve this knife well. Number one, you'll notice here that this is got a button on it. The button actually disengages a frame lock. First time I've ever seen a button that disengages a frame lock. I'm sure that it's been done before, but I haven't seen it. Usually what we see is a button that's disengaging a liner lock or a button that is a plunge lock. So this is kind of cool. It also has a sliding safety, which I think is important because the button is right where you're going to be gripping it. That button makes it impossible for not only the button to be depressed, but for the frame lock to disengage, making this pretty hardcore, right? S35VN better suited for a knife like this when you're going to be using a knife really hard. CBM 20C or M390 or 204P, all the same composition, essentially. I was going to make a comment about the slight variation in the composition because I know somebody will, but they're all essentially the same composition made by different companies. That is not a tough steel. S35VN, while not the toughest steel out there, is quite a bit tougher than M390, and if you're going to use this knife as intended, you're going to be touching it up or resharpening it often, and you're going to appreciate it when it's S35VN, or you're going to appreciate it for the fact that it is S35VN and not CPM 20CV that's been hardened to something like 62, which is not super fun to sharpen, even with diamond stones. So I like that. I also like the choke up position. I like that it's a larger knife without being a super bulky knife. I like that it's textured titanium. We've got a huge titanium backspacer, and we've got a nice, not milled, but just a good titanium pocket clip. Honestly, this is a really, really cool knife, and I like it a lot. I think these come in at $255. Given that this is definitely a premium knife and definitely, leaning more on the luxury side, it is also extremely capable. It is purpose built, and I like that. We get a lot of knives that are cool and really nice and fun, and they're functional, and they'll last a long time as long as you use them, like just for sort of light to medium duty. Yeah, I think it's more rare these days that we get something that is really purpose built and, able to tackle some of the more abusive, I'm not saying go out and pry with it, but some of the more abusive cutting tasks. So big fan of the Real Steel Evolution. I like that a lot. And surprisingly, for being on washers, it's pretty smooth. It's pretty smooth. Real Steel has really been impressing me lately, and I like this a lot. Finally, the last one. Probably the one in the thumbnail because that's the most attention grabbing. You probably just saw me unbox this. Have to talk about these again. Technically a knife, but also technically not a knife. These are the Reich tactical scissors. WTF? Well, if you're familiar with Reich, it's not that weird. Reich is a weird company. They can produce anything with the most incredible precision. It's surprising that we have tactical scissors, but then again, it's Reich and it's not really that surprising. So the way that you sort of release these, by the way, isn't it funny that it comes in a sheath, right? You could set this up for scout carry, I guess, if you want to. But yeah, in this form, just like this, while the tip is very thick, that is extremely sharp. I had a lot of people in YouTube shorts go, oh yeah, my kitchen scissors do the same thing. It's exactly the same. It's not exactly the same. That's an idiotic comment. That's not the same thing. These are definitely 100% designed as weapons. It's so clear that this is very different than typical kitchen shears, but I guess if you want to reduce it to that because you're a Debbie Downer and you like to walk around with a wet blanket over your face, then you go ahead and do that. But for those of you who want to have fun with me, the way that you morph these into scissor mode is by switching that up here. Now we're in scissor mode, right? You're ready to go. You're ready to cut through, whatever. I'll just use a note card here. And they will do it very easily, right? Now, if you want to go into ultra tactical mode, what you do is switch that back down while they're open, move them out, and now you have two beveled cutting edges, right? They are sharp enough. I guess you're not going to be doing any really purposeful slicing. I mean, as you can see here, I'm having a little bit of trouble actually biting into material, but they will do it, right? Really, it's the tips. The tips are, oh my God, incredibly pointy. Both this side and this side. You can see actually that big sort of tension coil spring that's in there. It's allowing you to do that. You can remove the, oh, I'm sorry. I thought that you could. Actually, I don't believe you can unless you remove this spring completely out of its position here. But I would leave it in. Putting it back together is actually pretty simple. You just need to find the right position for, actually, it's easier from this side. I'll just demonstrate real quick. Match that up, right? And then get it right here where there's tension, push forward, and you're back into scissor mode, which is really cool and almost completely useless to every living soul on this planet. But if you've been enjoying my channel for any period of time, you'll know that that is partially the name of the game here, right? This is interesting. We don't normally see stuff like this in the knife world, and I think it's really cool. What is it made out of? Wouldn't that be neat if it was CPM 20 CV? It's not. It's 4116, or more commonly known, 1.4116, and probably the reason for that is the multi-purpose nature of this. It's being pushed into a hypothetical role where you might be doing a little bit of food prep in your kitchen and at the next moment fighting ninjas in a back alley behind Walgreens or wherever. I don't know, where, you know, make up whatever you want, right? They're $185, which is hilariously overpriced for scissors, but for knives, maybe not. I don't know. I mean, it depends. If you reduce it to the materials alone, you're probably going to be disappointed, right? If you factor in cool factor, there's not really a lot else out on the market that's like this. So this is one of those things that's going to be a complete joke to a lot of people, understandably, and really, really cool to other people. I'm glad that they didn't go nuts with it and slap a $400 price tag on it. I don't know how I feel about $185, but it's hard to say because I've never really seen anything else like this. And I do think it's cool. And if you're wondering, is there play anywhere? Just a little tap right here, but everything else feels incredibly solid. If I was going to compare this to every pair of scissors I've ever handled, including my upgraded kitchen set that I just bought for my wife and I, those scissors feel like hot garbage pulled from planet garbage, out of a pile of garbage. They feel like garbage compared to these. These feel unbelievably high quality. It's really amazing how tight the tolerances are here, right? But you're going to have to factor in exactly how useful that is and whether or not you just want it because they're cool, which is, honestly, if you're going to buy these, I would just accept you want them because they're weird. That's why I would buy them, right? So it's up to you. But let's go over these again. We have the Reich Tactical Scissors. We have the Real Steel Evolution. Definitely, probably my favorite of the bunch, honestly. We have the Remt RT Kingfisher that is toolless, or well, the tool is actually the backspacer there. And then we have the Vosted Enkylo is how I'm going to pronounce it. I'm sure it's wrong. And then finally, the Remt Peregrine Falcon. Again, possible, definitely discount code for this one. Possibly it might work for that one as well, but I'll link everything down in the description. I think that's going to be pretty much it today, guys. Thanks so much for watching. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.